Hi, this is A New Nigeria with Wale Oluwade. This is your current affairs program where we'll examine the strategic issues bedeviling Nigeria's developmental aspirations and boldly offer practical suggestions on building the Nigeria of our collective desire. Now, today's episode promises to be exciting and riveting. My guest is already here to assist me in unpacking and also give depth and clarity to the topic of our discourse. As always, it's going to be evidence-driven, honest, bold, and a no-holds-barred conversation. So get ready as we begin in earnest. And now, let's get on with it. Today we're looking at restructuring, the restructuring debate, the issues for and against. For a long time, different sections, especially in the southern parts of Nigeria, southwest, southeast, and the south-south, have stridently called and agitated for restructuring of the federation through a brand new constitution as the minimum condition for peace and progress of this country. In fact, even as a precondition for participation in the forthcoming general elections of 2023. Sociocultural groups such as the Afenifere or Haneze, Indigbo, Middle Belt Forum, Pan-Nigeria Development Forum, that is PANDEF, have all lent their voices to this call. Likewise, eminent Nigerians such as Pa Ayo Adebanjo, Edwin Clark, and Professor George Obiozo, and others have likewise stated their support for this call. In addition, legal luminaries such as constitutional icons, Professors Ben Nwabweze and Akin Oyebode, have variously described the 1999 Constitution as a fraudulent piece of legislation. Reason being that its preamble, to wit, and I quote, "We, the people of Nigeria," end of quote, in their considered opinion, is a blatant lie, as the people in whom constitution-making powers rest never participated in the process culminating to its making. Now, a couple of weeks back, April 18th precisely, eminent statesman, legal titan, and educationist, Chief Afe Balola, SAN, came out smoking with a strong put down of the current democratic dispensation. Rather than conduct general elections next year, as stipulated by law, he advocated the jettisoning of the 1999 Constitution, setting up a 6-month interim government whose remit will be, among others, to develop a new look People's Constitution, which should provide for part-time legislators and a non-executive president. The new constitution should also provide a new federal system of government instead of this expensive presidential system of government. He likewise suggested a parliamentary system of government with a unicameral legislature, and concluded by saying that, and I quote, "Politics has become a lucrative enterprise in Nigeria," end of quote. What has made this eminent Nigerian to come to make this call at this critical juncture, and especially at a time when preparations are in full swing to hold general elections next year? These are some of the issues we're examining today. Like I said, my guest is here, already seated, Majeed Dahiru. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, we'll get right into the conversation. Stay tuned. Welcome back. My guest is here, Mr. Dahiru Majeed. Good afternoon, Majeed.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here.
Same here.
Thank
You're
you
welcome.
very much.
Thank you very much. Majeed Dahiru is a prominent newspaper columnist with the Daily Trust Nigeria, and I think one or two other national newspapers. He is also a well-known face on TV as a public affairs analyst. So, Majeed, you saw the intro. What do you understand by restructuring? What, in your opinion, is restructuring?
Restructuring simply means good governance, because the subjective interpretation of what restructuring means depends on who you are speaking to. But I think they all actually key into the concept of good governance. Everybody wants improvement in welfare and security. So some think they can get it through creating more states, merging states, going back to regionalism, adopting parliamentary system of government, all sorts of suggestions. But the bottom line is all of these suggestions are simply towards the achievement of an improvement of security and welfare, which is the primary responsibility of government, not just in Nigeria, but all over the world. And so I think if you want to collapse all of the meanings, all of the agitation for restructuring from whoever you're speaking to, be it from a point of view of resource control or regionalism or devolution of powers, whatever it is, all of the elements that have been, thrown up as restructuring, including, of course, fiscal federalism, just name it. It's all about good governance.
That's what it boils down to.
It boils down to good governance. But it is the quest for good governance and the absence of good governance that has actually heightened the calls for restructuring. And restructuring is something that we shouldn't even debate. No structure in the world is perfect. It's work in progress, and improvements on the governing framework, the legal governing framework of any country, through either restructuring, reconfiguration, or anything that makes it work better, should be something that must be done by the political leadership of that country from time to time as the need arises. And so it shouldn't be something that we should be debating. And for me, if we must birth a new Nigeria, we need to begin this interrogation at this point in time. Why did the parliamentary system of the First Republic fail? Why did it fail? Why did the military dictatorship between 1966 and 1983 first, 1979 first, and between 1983 and 1999, why did they not also live up to the expectation of the people? Even when in other jurisdictions, each of these systems of government have worked for certain people. The UK has practicing parliamentary system for as long as we know, and it's working for them. The US has practicing presidential system of government, it works for them. Some other countries like dictatorships, it's working for them. Since 1999, arguably, we've seen a steady deterioration in the structure of governance in Nigeria. To the extent that democracy or democratic form of government has become delegitimized so much that people are actually calling for a substitution of this current system with something else. In as much as we believe that democracy is the best form of government. But the question is, has it worked for Nigeria? If it hasn't, why has it not worked? So we need to integrate some of these issues comprehensively.
Thank you, Majeed, for your opening statements. Now, specifically, Chief Afe Babalola called for an interim government arrangement. What's your opinion on that? And it ties into what you said.
Yes.
He's now saying, this one we're doing is not working. Can we go back to what we've done before?
Yes. The thing is, what Chief Afe Babalola has said appears to be an illegality, appears to be something that could create anarchy. However, you must understand the context of his frustration that actually led him to make such drastic recommendations. The thing is, the current system is not working. And he said something that politics in Nigeria has become a lucrative enterprise. I think he was being charitable. Politics in Nigeria has become a criminal enterprise. And so it is not working. And that is the reason you are having the multifaceted challenges that is facing Nigeria today, from insecurity to the economy, and of course, to the elephant in the room, corruption. And so, why has democracy failed? In the same way that military dictatorship failed, in the same way that the parliamentary system and what you call the true federalism structure of the First Republic also failed. It failed so much that we ran away from it and opted for a more unified structure. And only for us to now go back to start, fantasizing about. So something has been fundamentally wrong from the very beginning of our journey to nationhood. And it is that fundamental wrong that I think we should be talking about now. Otherwise, no system work, including the interim arrangement that is proposed, will not work because that factor is still there. So we need to find out what the factor behind the failure of Nigeria has been.
What do you think that factor is?
We've not been able to evolve into a
Very
nation.
briefly, so that we can take more questions.
We've not been able to evolve into a true nation state. We are still a country of multi-ethnic nationalities and not a nation of citizens, of Nigerian citizens. And until we transform from a country of tribesmen into a united nation of citizens, no structure of government, no policy, no program Nothing can work for such a country. And there are a plethora of examples globally. You have to first get the fundamentals of statecraft. You have to evolve into a cohesive, socially cohesive, thoroughly united nation state before you can even begin to contemplate systems of government.
Brilliant, brilliant, Majeed. Since the commencement of this Fourth Republic, we have had several constitutional amendment exercises. The National Assembly, in your opinion, have they lived up to their responsibilities?
No, but they have lived up to their purpose.
Please
it sounds like a contradiction.
Yes, of course.
Ordinarily, the responsibility of the National Assembly to make good laws for the good governance of Nigeria. We have to now interrogate how we are the members of the National Assembly elected. Now, unfortunately for Nigeria, as was in the First Republic, Second Republic, it is with the Fourth Republic. Because our federating units were ab initio structured along ethno-geographic fault lines. States, local government, federal constituencies were created with ethnic and religious considerations in mind. And so, that has made politics of ethnic and religious identity the primary driver of our democratic process. And so most members of the National Assembly were elected to service their micro-sections from the different federal constituencies and parliamentary units across the country.
Not to reconstruct the tribesmen into citizens.
No, it's not their purpose. The purpose is you are elected for a particular district. You are supposed to now go to the center and get for us our own share of the national cake.
And maintain the status quo, however unjust, however unworkable it is.
So a parliamentarian comes to the National Assembly is not concerned about the good governance of Nigeria. He's simply concerned about what can I get from the dining table to take home with myself as the biggest beneficiary first. That is because the reward for identity politics is patronage, a very corrupt system of patronage. So it is at the expense of public purse that patronage is sustained. And so you can't expect them to serve beyond their purpose. The reason they were elected is to go there and participate in the bazaar, in the buffet that is the Nigerian state. And so, yes, they may not be living up to the expectations of modern parliaments. But our system is what they're actually in compliance with. So they are living up to their purpose. We need to be honest about this. And now look at how do we correct this anomaly fundamentally? Because no nation on earth, no geographic entity has survived with this kind of configuration. So Nigeria is configured to share resources and not to actually create resources. We are wired to share national cake and not to actually bake or enlarge the national cake. And this whole system is being sustained by the monthly allocation of crude oil revenues. Nigeria relies mainly for its major source of external receipts
80% thereabout
on export of crude oil in its crudest form. So we are so engrossed in sharing national cake that we can't even improve the processes of crude oil exploration or
the value chain, open it up, and all of that.
We are not patient for that. So everything must be shared. The whole value chain has been compromised on the altar of ethnicity and religion, which is the alter ego of our politics. So we need to go back to the basics. Otherwise, we will not have a headway.
Brilliant, Majeed. In your opinion, Majeed, why is this clamor for restructuring, good governance, and all of that? Why does it seem to be coming from a particular section of the country? And to my mind, the northern part of Nigeria that will be the ultimate beneficiaries, even though the entire Nigeria will be the greatest beneficiary of a well-functioning Nigeria. But the northern part, because if I give you the statistics of what part of Nigeria has the highest number of out-of-school children, poverty, low GDP, and all of that. It's all concentrated in the North. By my studies, by research, I'm talking of empirical facts now, it will take the North minimum 100 years to close the educational gap with the southern part of Nigeria. But the section of Nigeria most resistant to the call for restructuring is the North. Why? Briefly, Majeed, why?
It has to do more with power politics. The current structure, yes, within the purview of our political system that has to do with power grab for self-service and resource sharing and allocation. Yes, the North with 19 states out of 36, with 419 local government out of 774, of course with more federal constituencies, more senatorial seats, appear to have an advantage on who decides who gets what, when, and how from Nigeria's internally generated revenues. And so there is an elite consensus in the North, which is a misguided one, by the way, to hold on to this privilege. And you would observe that the cry for restructuring has been loudest in the last 7 years. That is because in the last 7 years of the President Muhammadu Buhari administration, who happens to be a northerner, we've seen the elevation of Arewa privilege to statecraft. The marginalization of people from other sections of Nigeria clearly has actually aggravated what was already a problematic structure that was skewed in favor of a particular section over and above the other. And so when you add this to the real and perceived marginalization of regions in the South, and there are glaring evidence to that effect. You now understand why people are now asking for outright disbandment of the 1999 Constitution. So it brings us back to the fundamentals. Irresponsibility of political leaders. Leaders who do not understand their role, their responsibility as people that should build a nation by deliberately inclusive political processes and purposeful administrative procedures to back them up. In order to evolve Nigeria into a more cohesive and united nation, it is this failure to do this that has actually aggravated what was already a festering sore and the attendant clamor for put this house down and rebuild.
If you can do this in 1 minute, thereabouts, what's the solution? Briefly, what's the solution?
We need to begin a journey towards nationhood. Sometimes I wonder who actually qualifies as a northerner and who is a southerner. How do you reside in the South all your life, do your businesses in the South, and yet you still place your allegiance to the North? How do you reside in the North and live all your life, your businesses, your properties, you pay taxes in the North, and your allegiance is still to a South, so to a southern part of the country? And so we need, at this point, to have an enlightened political leadership that can begin the journey towards nationhood by evolving deliberately inclusive political processes and administrative procedures that will transform Nigeria from a country of tribesmen to a nation of citizens.
Thank you very much, Majeed. And that's the interview section. We'll take a short break and then we'll come back for my closing statements. Please stay with us. And here are my closing statements. Personally, I believe as imperfect as the 1999 Constitution is, if only we had patriots as leaders, it shouldn't be an impediment to good governance and the delivery of tangible democracy dividends to the long-suffering masses of Nigeria. It was Thomas Jefferson who said, "God grant that men of principle shall be our principal men." There is no perfect constitution in the world. In fact, Britain, with whom we share kinship of sorts, has no written constitution. Also, the oldest written constitution, the United States Constitution, enacted in 1787, almost 235 years ago, has been amended just 27 times as they, and I quote, continue to seek a more perfect union, end of quote. Take the first, the second, the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th, and 19th amendments, which dealt with several fundamental issues affecting the lives of the people of America, from freedom of speech and religion, right to bear arms, that's the Second Amendment, and then liberty to slaves, that's the 13th Amendment, citizenship to former slaves, 14th Amendment, right of slaves to vote, that's the 15th Amendment, and finally, 19th Amendment that talks about voters, voting rights to women. So these amendments were extremely strategic, to making America that we know as we know it today. And yet, it, that is the United States, is still a work in progress. So I explored this bit of history to give some context and to assert it isn't the 1999 Constitution, per se, that's our problem, but the kinds of individuals we have been unfortunate to have as leaders. We have had and still have a preponderance of unprincipled men as leaders. Now, let's be honest with ourselves. This democracy isn't working. Or rather, let me restate that. This democracy is only working for a handful of oligarchs. And sadly, that's not what we signed on to, in 1998, when the military succumbed to the strident resistance and agitations of democracy activists, some of whom, sadly, paid the supreme price. What we have on our hands currently is a situation of state capture by a few individuals, either in or out of government. And consequently, the rest of society is left holding the short end of the stick, as it were. A situation where political office holders and personnel of ministries, departments, and agencies consume over 70% of total annual budgetary provisions, rather than provide critical services to the populace. This is nothing, but the criminal mismanagement of our nation's resources. To be honest, this tragic state of affairs can simply not continue. The prevailing pandemic of insecurity points starkly to the unraveling of our fledgling democracy, and perhaps even more dire, the complete disintegration of the nation itself. Why is this so? What is or are my evidence? Just look around you. What do you see? Poverty, misery, and underdevelopment everywhere. We are daily, inundated with a barrage of these awful socioeconomic realities daily. Yet, in the midst of these grim realities, a few are having a blast at all our expense. Political office holders are ensconced and luxuriating in wanton opulence and obscene consumption, while the masses live in abject poverty and squalor. Those whom were entrusted with our common patrimony have expropriated this for their personal use. So what's the solution to this madness? How do we correct this unfortunate anomaly? I have a number of strategic suggestions. You can find this, all of that, in my book, Gangster's Paradise. I dwelt extensively on this topic therein. I will have mention just 3 here. Before going into this, I urge the members of the National Assembly to put aside their selfish considerations, the wearing of starched and embroidered costumes and nicely branded caps, and let them take their constitutional duties with the utmost urgency and seriousness which the moment demands, by urgently amending the 1999 Constitution to correct the following strategic issues. Number 1, we must commit as a nation that every Nigerian child must be educated from primary to secondary school. One of the great ironies and scandals of Nigeria's crisis of nationhood is that the country's post-independence leaders, particularly from the 1980s, hitherto, seem totally uninterested in providing qualitative education to our future leaders. Whereas the British colonialists went to extreme lengths and in certain instances adopted aggressive methods to ensure the people of their colonies were educated, even at the obvious risk to their continued hegemony. Number 2, if anybody, and I repeat, anybody tells you Nigeria can be developed without a strong and totally independent local government, they lied to you desperately. The 1999 Constitution was more than criminal on this strategic issue. While it states in one breath that there are 2 tiers of government, it, however, also states in the 4th schedule the duties and functions of the local government areas. To worsen matters, it created a joint account for states and local governments, and put the administration of this, in the purview of state governors, thus effectively snuffing the life out of local governments, and that is what has largely brought this country, to the sorry pass it is today. I'll devote a full edition to the strategic role of local government areas in nation building in our next edition. It's unmissable, so watch out for it. Lastly, my final recommendation, at least for now, is a constitutional amendment that permits and enshrines state or community policing. The idea that anyone can secure Nigeria with a federal policing system is sheer lunacy. And you know what the popular definition of insanity entails. That's exactly what we've done for decades. If we do these three, suggestions urgently, we would have commenced the arduous task of remaking Nigeria. We still have a sliver of opportunity to salvage whatever is left of this beautiful but much blighted country. I believe in a new Nigeria, and it is possible. And those are my closing thoughts. Thank you. And that's the program for today. Remember to follow me on my different social media handles. Drop your comments also. I'd love to hear from you. And I'll see you next time. Bye for now.